everyone, Cathy Zielske here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Do you ever struggle with painting inside the lines on stamped images? If you answered yes, I've got a really easy way to increase your stay in the line painting odds. All you need is a little embossing powder to throw onto your stamped image and you'll be good to go. Did you know I only learned to heat emboss in 2017? No, seriously. Stick around, I've got some fun card projects coming up next. The stamps I'm using today are called Happy Days. This is a 6x8 stamp set I designed that is full of happy sentiments and can be mixed and matched with all the little sub-sentiments to create all kinds of card projects. So lots to play with here, and I'm going to be showing you how to make a love you card on camera today. I've got Distress inks from Holtz and my water brush, and I've got a little bit of VersaFine ink and some embossing powder that is clear. And this is what is going to help me paint inside the chunky lines of my stamps. I've also got a little Holtz watercolor cardstock. I tend to stamp on the smooth side, but I love this bright white cardstock. And of course, we'll be using a few other things as we go, so let's get into it. I'm going to stamp the first Love You down onto my watercolor cardstock. And I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black because it's an ink that stays wet a little longer, so it'll give me time to sprinkle on some of this clear embossing powder, which will not only make it black and shiny, but it will give me this little raised edge, which is going to help me paint. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up really well and stamp it down using my Misty tool. I'll bring in my Swiffer cloth here just to smoothly apply even pressure. And while I got it, I'm going to flip the cardstock and stamp a second one. This is not just to make a second card, but you know, if you mess up, it's always nice to have a backup. So I always stamp a couple. All right, now the ink is still damp, so I'm going to quickly sprinkle on my clear powder, let that sit on there and coat up right over the ink. And then I will just tap it off, and you'll see I've got that nice little coating. So I'm going to heat up my embossing tool, bring it to the paper, and then you see that magical shiny black ink come through. But what it's also doing is creating texture and a little bit of a raised edge. See that? That's going to help us paint. Now here's the way I'm going to work this. I'm not going to paint first. I'm going to die cut first, and there's a reason. Because I screw up die cutting all the time, and I hate to do all the work of painting and then die cut it incorrectly. So I created this little template out of some lighter paper, framing out that Love You, and once it's taped into place, I can drop this die back in and it almost locks into that opening where the paper template is. And once it's locked in, I'm going to tape this down and run it through. I just don't like to waste time, and I can't tell you, well, I can tell you a number of times I will paint something and then I basically mess it up on the die cutting. So if you die cut first and it turns out like this, I know that looks good, so I'm going to proceed with the painting. I'm smushing down all of my Distress cubes onto my little mini water media mat. Love this little mat. And then I'll just pick up each color with the Detailer water brush and drop it in. And the great thing is that little raised embossed clear edge really does serve to contain the Distress ink. And the embossed area also resists the ink. So even if you get your brush a little bit onto the black outline, it's not going to stick because of the embossing. And then all you do is you just work your way around and fill in. And this is just a lot easier, in my opinion, to do painting when you have a little ledge helping to contain your color. In fact, I actually had done this without the embossing when I was first kind of brainstorming ideas for the cards, and I kept painting outside of the lines, and then I thought, wait a minute, didn't you once see in a Jennifer Maguire video how she puts clear over wet ink? Because let's be real, this isn't a technique that I invented, my friends. It all flows down from the Queen Jennifer Maguire. But you know what? She's pretty smart, because that looks pretty darn good. All right, let's move on to the stamping of the sentiment. Just got a little bit of Simon Black cardstock here, and I will take my Embossing Magic pad and lay down that powder because I only want my powder to stick where the Versamark is going. I've got my little cube here. I'm going to ink that up and then just apply some even pressure, not too much, but not too little. And then I'm going to sprinkle some white embossing powder over this little area. Sprinkle that on. The black cardstock really does want to grab this powder, so once I sprinkle this on a couple times and get a nice coating, I always like to take a dry brush, and I just have one little paintbrush for this purpose, and I will brush off any of the excess powder. Just gentle, let's get it off there, and then bring the heat tool and melt the powder. Looks good. Now I'm going to use a sentiment label from Simon Says Stamp to cut part of this out. I'm going to line this up, tape it down, run it through my die cut machine, and then I'll just bring it to my paper trimmer to get nice straight cuts off either side. And that is ready for my card project. I'm going to do a little embossing for one of my panels, and here's a little tip. If your embossing mat is ever coated with mucky muck, grab a lint roller and just go over the mat. It actually picked up some of my hair. I apologize for that. My hair is everywhere. But that way it cleans up your mat so it doesn't press any mucky muck into your paper. So I've got the mat, my paper. I'll place my stencil right over top and then place the embossing plate on top. And then I'll just run that back and forth a few times. And the paper that I'm using is the Neenah Solar White 80 pounds. Sometimes I use the 80 pound when embossing because it just takes the impression a little bit easier, and you can see that. Isn't that cool? It's such a subtle thing. I love dry embossing. It's like my favorite way to add subtle texture to a project. Now I will prep my card base. This will be a US A2 card, which is 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. And I will tape my card base closed because, you know me, I like them to be very flat while I'm adhering all of my elements. I'm going to take my embossed panel, and I'm going to use some of this tape runner from Scrapbook Adhesives to lay down some sticky tape on the back of the panel. And then I've got a piece of fun foam, and I'll stick that right onto the panel for some quick dimension. But then I'll use liquid glue to adhere this panel to the card base. Just sort of a process that I do. And well, it works. Press that down. Look at that nice little 1/4 inch of space. And then I have popped up the Love You and popped up the little So Very Much to the card base. To finish this project, I'll add a few sequins. Just going to pop 5 of them down on the project using my liquid glue. And I think that added just a nice little cascade of shine, all with a direct connection to that center sentiment. So I don't know about you, I think it's very cute. I think it's cute. And I painted and I stayed in the lines thanks to a raised edge of embossing powder. Now here's another card I did, and I used a different stencil just to add some texture to the panel. But again, you can see that coloring in between these chunky lines. They have this embossed edge, so you also get the bonus of having the shine, but it just helped to contain all that color. And there you have 2 cards where I stayed in the lines, and I'm so happy with the results. I hope this inspires you to give this technique a try the next time you are going to stamp some images and paint on some color. Thanks so much for watching today. I would love to have you become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. And if you do subscribe, be sure to hit the gray bell below the video so that you don't miss the next time I post. Here are a couple other videos that you might be interested in watching. Thanks so much and have a great day.